I talk a lot on this channel about buying your first home, but in this video, I'm actually going to be sharing my own experience buying my first home, what it was like, the ups and downs, and what came with it. So you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. Hi, I'm Sam, a mortgage expert in the United Kingdom, and on my channel, if you hit like and subscribe, you'll find loads of content on how to buy your home. So looking back, I first bought my home about 10, 12 years ago-ish. I was pretty young and I had no idea about the entire process. Fortunately for me, my family has a long history being in financial services. So when the time came along, it was pretty straightforward for me to get on there. Now, in terms of savings, I had the fortunate position that my grandparents had saved for me and all my cousins a small amount of money that we could put towards a purchase. The first house that I looked at was around 67 grand, I think I paid for it, and I used a 5% deposit. So this day and age, that's absolutely nothing. Trying to find a house for that cheap on the same street now is just unattainable. It's about 120 grand to buy the same house now, about 12 years later. So property is a great investment, but we've got more videos on that on our YouTube channel if you go and like and subscribe. Now, going into the mortgage application process, I didn't have a clue. I was working in a call center at the time, something totally unrelated, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I had this money set in the bank and I wanted to invest in property. Didn't really want to leave home, but I wanted to buy the house, rent it out. I was a young lad and thought, yeah, I'm gonna have my first buy-to-let and it's gonna be great. And it was. So I remember sitting down with my granddad. I sent him my pay slips, I sent him my bank statements. I remember sending in the savings account where I'd put the money into at the time. And he produced an agreement in principle for me with NatWest. I went for a 2-year fixed rate of interest, and then he submitted the application, a valuation was carried out, an agreement in principle was carried out, and I could go around looking at houses. And I did that typical thing, I got overexcited, I literally viewed one house, was stood in there, it had, it was terrible, it had green carpet, like a dark green carpet, it had green wallpaper on the walls with like a dark brown sort of trim all the way around. It had a brown banister. You went into the kitchen and it was an old white kitchen with a grey worktop with pan stains on it. The wallpaper in there was yellow and blue like squares. Like, I am not lying, this was the house that we were buying. It smelled of damp and there was a hole in the ceiling, and the guy went, oh yeah, don't worry about that, mate. I've been looking to get that fixed. But, you know, it was a leak, but the leak's been fixed now. And I was just like, I want to buy it. Let's start the negotiations. So I rang the estate agent and said to them, I want to make an offer of 60 grand. I think at the time it was up for 80,000. And then eventually, with a bit of back and forward, we managed to get the purchase price to around 67,000, 67,500. It was some sort of weird figure anyway. But yeah, 67 grand, let's call it. And we went through the application process with my granddad. Now, thinking back to my time, I have no idea what we did at the time. I think it was an extra pay slip, an extra bank statement, and he submitted that. And one thing that I really let myself down with is I didn't engage in the process. I was fortunate enough that I was working with a mortgage advisor. Granted, it was a family member, but I simply gave them the information and I had no interest in what happened. And I think that was really my downfall, because I just thought, this is easy, give it to a mortgage advisor. He submitted the application, not really interested in anything else. We then sat down and went through the different types of insurances. So we looked at buildings and contents, we looked at critical illness cover, income protection, because I was buying it as a single applicant. I wanted to make sure that the income was covered coming into the household. The rest of that was a bit of a blur, to be honest with you, until the point when I was pushing to get the keys. We got the keys and it was the most underwhelming experience, shock. It wasn't a nice experience. It wasn't the sunshine and roses. It wasn't the pop in the champagne. It wasn't a big fanfare. Literally went into an estate agent. They said it wasn't ready yet. The keys haven't turned up. And I had to sit in a car park outside the Asda, the big Asda, for over an hour. And then we went straight to the house. And I remember just opening up the door, and the first thing, I got a big waft of like a musty smell. It was absolutely disgusting, the house. It hadn't been cleaned. Just started ripping up the carpets, threw it all out in the garden, rang me dad. I said, we've completed on the house. He's, oh, amazing. I was like, yeah, I've ripped up the carpets. I pulled half the kitchen out already. And he was like, well, how are you going to fund that? My mistake, which we go into in other videos on the channel, is what I didn't prepare for the costs after I'd purchased the house. As a young lad, thought I could take it all on, bought the house, had no cash, started ripping up the carpets. What was I supposed to do? Take out a load of debt, which was a bad decision. So in a nutshell, that's my underwhelming experiencing of buying a house. Now, going back to the offer process and the estate agents and making offers, one of the questions we always get asked, or I get asked, is, how do I make an offer to an estate agent, and what's the best way to position myself? Well, first and foremost, I was a first-time buyer. I had savings in the bank, and I was already working with a mortgage advisor. Now, once we'd gone to make the offer, I'd called the estate agent, I told them that I had an agreement of principle, and I'd asked them to make an offer. And I remember saying to them on the phone, I want to make an offer of 60,000, it's up for 80. And they went, what? We're not going to put that forward. You're going to have to up your offer there. I was like, hi, how are you? Trying to buy this house. And they said, we'll go back to the vendor, we'll come back to you. 5 minutes later, offer rejected. Whether he even sent it to them, I don't know. But legally they should put all offers forward. And then there was back and forward. I'd emailed them to say 65 grand. And I remember being in work at the time, and they kept ringing me and said, we've not accepted that offer, but can you go somewhere else? So I remember ringing them saying it's like £67,200. And the reaction from the estate agent was like, oh, well, do you not want to round that up? So in the end, it was like 67,250, and it actually went through and they accepted it. And it was kind of underwhelming, because when I took that phone call from the estate agent to say, your offer's been accepted, it was a case of, hi Sam, your offer's been accepted. What's the name of your solicitor? We'll send you out the heads of terms, and you can speak to your advisor and get your application submitted. So through that whole process of me trying to find the agreement of principle, trying to understand different types of products and lenders that are available to me, to navigate putting an offer forward, never felt like I was really getting anywhere. But my problem was I just didn't engage with it. So word of advice to first-time buyers, always make sure you're engaged and ask loads of questions, because I was just going with the flow. I wasn't asking any questions. I was like, oh yeah, I'll put an offer on that house. Oh, well, I need to submit my application. I was never really engaged to truly understand what home ownership means. And it's quite a powerful sentiment to have, that you are owning a piece of land, you are owning a property. So you should definitely stay in tune there. In terms of surveys, I booked what's called a level 2 survey to check it out. As I said, I went in, there's a hole in the roof, it stunk, there was old carpets, there was one of those 1980s fireplaces that you might have seen your grandparents have before. And I just wanted to go in and rip all of that out. The survey we paid for was about £250. It highlighted that it needed a full damp-proof course, so the lower parts of the house, you could see little bits of black mold with rising damp, so I needed a full damp course. I think that was about £900 at the time. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I made, and you shouldn't make, is underestimating how much it costs to do some home improvements. So it was great, I had my 5% deposit, and I had enough money to pay for the solicitors and any extra legal fees and my survey, and for a little bit of the home renovation work to start. But honestly, gutting out a house can be so much more expensive, especially if you're going to try and do it for the first time. And I mean, everything is expensive. We had to replaster the entire house, which I hadn't budgeted for. The damp course cost me more money than I didn't realise. Council tax, like what even is council tax? 137 quid for what? I just didn't understand all of the things they needed to pay for. So when I moved into the property, I was with British Gas at the time. I'd obviously gone in and thought, right, we'll get a Sky TV package straight away. Top one, Sky Sports and Movies are a must. Netflix had just started to make an appearance at that point. Buildings and contents cover that we had in place, we needed to make sure that because I'm doing some renovation work, it's going to cover all the contents, it's going to buy new things for the house, and if the house falls down, it stands back up again and we can pay for it to be rebuilt. It'll cover the roof, that kind of thing. So all of these bills, as soon as I got the keys, amalgamated. All the letters come through the post, and now I had all these direct debits coming out my account. Now, aside to all of that, I still haven't renovated it all. So by the time I knew it, I had to decide what I was going to do next. Either do it bit by bit, or because I'm quite, kind of let's just roll with the punches sort of person, decided to get a loan. So I took out a £15,000 loan with Royal Bank of Scotland for £343 a month over 5 years. So overnight, I'd got the keys, ripped up the carpets, got all these brand new direct debits on my household bills to pay, like my council tax. Now I've also, on top of that, got another 300 and something pounds to pay as well. 15 grand in home renovations doesn't go very far. So when I paid for my kitchen and I felt flush because I had the cash and I hadn't budgeted, I hadn't given myself a set budget of what I wanted to do, I had to then buy tiles. Never done tiling before. Me and my dad had to give it a go because we couldn't afford to pay for a tiler. And then done all of that, guess what? Got no furniture. So how the hell was I going to live in a house without any furniture? So then we went to Sofology. There are other reputable sofa companies. Found a sofa for £1,400, put it on finance. And I think that was maybe 60, 70 quid a month. Needed a bed. We went to a bed shop. Mattresses, how expensive can they be? Bought that, put it on finance. It was 0%, but that was another 60, 70 pounds. So already I've got my mortgage payment, my household bills, my Royal Bank of Scotland loan. Now I've got 2 extra things on finance. And then I thought, do you know what? After all this, I fancy going on holiday. I've got no money. So then I applied for a credit card. Credit card come through. Went and booked the flights to Spain. Went on a nice holiday and come back. I thought, actually, I'm under so much pressure right now. So where was I best placed to have saved and done it room by room, or saved more before I purchased a house, or was I right in what I'm doing? Now, if I could wind back time and give you one piece of advice, I would save the extra money, or I would just wait the extra 6 weeks until a few more paydays and you can comfortably pay for that. Because if you don't, you make a decision today to take out a loan, it's around you for the next 5 years. There's no getting out of that unless you repay it. So then in 2 years' time after that, what we had the painstaking process of is remortgaging and trying to consolidate all of that. Now the house price has increased, which is fine to do. Look, and we help so many people in those exact circumstances: buy a house, do it up, increase the value, refinance everything and put it back into one mortgage. But if your income doesn't reflect that and you're taking out the extra commitments, you can maybe get yourself a bit caught short where the affordability doesn't stack up. So we need to be really careful. And this is why we always say it's so important to disclose all of your plans with a broker, because we can help you understand exactly what you need to be budgeting for in terms of your house purchase, your ongoing budgets, and what you might want to spend from there on in. So if you struggle at budgets like I did, we recently sat down with Andy Lang from a company called Money, and we discussed everything you need to know about budgets. So going on to something you talk regularly about, which is the 50-30-20 rule.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, give us a quick summary of that.
Yeah, so we talk about the concept. It's a well-known global concept that your income coming in should be broken down into 3 pots. So 50% is your needs. That's all your boring stuff like your mortgage, rent, all your bills. 30% is your wants. That's things like your meals out, cinema trips, clothes, etc. And then 20% is savings or paying debt back is kind of the theory. So the concept, I think, is a great concept. I think the numbers are a challenge in terms of the percentages. And we talk about this, about how it's quite aspirational. So I think having 50% of your income paying for all your needs is very ambitious right now with the way things are. I think if I look at my own situation, ours are probably at 70% realistically. And then that leaves us 30 to split between wants and savings.
So from all the lessons I've learned from buying that first house, I've got 5 things that you really need to zone in on when you're buying your first house. So the first things first is make sure you've got absolutely everything that you need for your mortgage ready and waiting. So pay slips, bank statements, ID, all that sort of stuff. Make sure you've got it ready, because when the bank or your mortgage advisor asks for it, you can just go, boom, there you go. There's everything that you need. It makes their life easier and it's less stressful for you trying to run around speaking to HR or whoever you need to get all these documents together. The second is engage in the process. So buying a house can be overwhelming, and we can all be really focused on buying the couch or what we're going to do to the house when we get in there. But you need to make sure you're reading all the terms and conditions, you're not missing anything out, you're speaking with your solicitors to understand the paperwork, how you're going to own the house. You know, if you're buying in joint names, or sorry, with a partner, are you going to buy tenants in common or joint tenancy? That's a consideration, and future planning for your family as well. So really, really engage with that. The third thing is work with an advisor. Now, if you don't work with an advisor and you go direct to the bank, it's absolutely fine, it's your choice. But with an advisor, you're going to have somebody on the other end of the phone that's going to be telling you everything's all right. They're going to find you the best rates across every lender. And if things do go sideways, like a down valuation or something crops up on the survey, they'll be able to help you find them solutions. If you're going direct with the bank, you're going to be sat with them. They can't do the mortgage, and you have to restart the process with another bank and then another building society, or until you get to the right one that says yes for you. So working with an advisor means it's one point of contact. You can ask them all the questions in the world and make sure that the home buying process is as stress-free as possible. The fourth thing I would say is understand what your monthly bills are going to be. So I made loads of mistakes I didn't really understand what council tax was. I knew I had to pay something, but I think when it came through at £137, I remember ringing my dad, like we all do, and went, what am I paying for? And he had to explain what council tax was. And maybe there's a whole thing about society where we should teach people younger in high school about these real world things that we need to pay for. And we've got loads of videos that we can go into about that. But it's just understanding exactly what those budgets are going to be. I knew what the mortgage payment was going to be, I knew what the deposit was going to be, I knew what the solicitor wanted, but I never actually sat down and gone, okay, let's work out gas, electricity, council tax, life insurance, critical illness cover, income protection, all those sorts of things, and then potentially looking at, you know, what the loan might cost. So looking at the budget there and what I can spend it on. And number 5 is try and enjoy the process. Now, like I said earlier, yeah, speaking to estate agents can be a bit of a headache, and there's lots of people who want to speak to you and are going to ask you for documents, but what you're doing and buying a house is really powerful. And you should be proud of the fact that you've saved your deposit, or you've got somebody to support you on the deposit, and you're buying a home for you and your financial future. So really enjoy it and understand the process. And when you get them keys, that will be a really, really sweet point in your life. Now look, if you've got any questions about my journey and you want to hear me waffle on anymore, or you want some guidance on yours, then leave them in the comments below. If you want a full breakdown of the home buying process, then click the video on your screen right now. And before I forget, I've created a first time buyer guide, which is free for you to download in the description box below. Remember, like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next week for another video. Bye for now.